All right, welcome back. In this video, we're going to take a look at testing returned errors. So here in our main.go file, we have two different functions, and they're both returning an error. And we're going to test these functions inside of our main_test.go. But first, we need to create some errors. So we've created two errors, two different ways here. And if we look inside the built-in package in the core language, this is just where we have Go installed, we see error is just an interface. So it's an interface, so anything that has a method called error that returns a string is going to be of that type. So anything that has this function, or this signature. So looking at this, our first error that we created a type called error_Other, and we just made it a struct. And remember that it's an interface. It needs to have this error method that returns a string, which we've created here, and we're returning our string. And then we just have to create our variable, error_Other, and just give it the type that we had just created. Now, a much quicker and easier way is to use the new function inside the errors package, and you just pass in the string. So there's a few little things to be aware of with this, so we're going to go ahead and look through our code to show that. But let's first look at our open file function. So this one's just going to use the OS package, use the open function, pass in our string. Now, yes, normally we would do something with the file that is returned if it was successful. But in this video, we're just concerned with looking at the errors. So we're going to go ahead and return that error. Now, we're purposely throwing an error. So as you can see in this directory here, we do not have a file called non-existing file. We do have one called myfile.txt. It just says hello, but we're purposely throwing an error so we can test to see if we get the error we expect. So let's just go ahead and run this. Oops. There we go. Okay, so if we take a look at this, and of course, we print off the value, the type, and as you can see here, our value, it says open non-existing file. The system cannot find the file specified. So that is the error we were looking for. And the type is pointed to inside the FS package, a variable called path error. So that's the particular error we're looking for in this situation. So we're going to go ahead and check for this error. And so we saved our error, and then we're going to check to see if it is that error. So inside the errors package, there is a function called is. And the great thing about this one, it's not just going to check to see if it is that particular error. Let's say if it's going to check the whole chain, to see if it finds a match in there. So say if we have a whole bunch of wrapped errors, it's going to look to see if we find one in there. So we're going to take our error that we got from our function, and we're going to go ahead and check and see if it's the error that this error not exist inside the FS package. So if it is, then it's going to say, yes, this equates to true. And if it's not, it's going to say false. So taking a look at that, this one was true. Yes, that was the error we were expecting. So again, in that same package, in the FS package, you have other different errors like the error permission. So this is doing the same thing, but we want this one to be false. So this is what we expect it to be. Since this is the error we know we should be, since it doesn't exist, that's the error we're expecting. And we should get a false on this one. And looking at that, yes, it comes to false. And here is one little gotcha that you have to be aware of. So we're using errors.new here to create to save two new, error 1 and error 2. Now, one thing to be aware of, let's go ahead and move this down a little bit, is that while we're printing both of these, we're printing the value and the type of error1 and of error2. You can see that they have the same values and they have the same type, a pointer to error, error string. These are not actually going to be the same. So if we check to see, for equality, it's going to say, nope, that's false. And if we go a little bit further down, we use the error.Is function, and it's also going to say false. So taking a closer look at inside the errors package, the new function, if we take a look at it, it says new returns an error that formats as the given text. Each call to the new returns a distinct error value, even if the text is identical. So returns a distinct error value. So that means that we can't just check for equality. We have to look for where it's saved into the same variable. So even though these two are in the same scope, because we're not pointing to that same underlying structure there, item there, it's not going to work. So a better thing to do would be if we put an error up here where, inside of func main and our other functions, it's able to get access to that as it's within that scope. That's what we would want. So let's go ahead and take a look here when we run our check name length function. So we pass in let's go ahead and take a look at the function. So we're going to be passing in name, which is too long username. And with this one, we're looking for usernames are between 5 and 17. So it's non-inclusive, so it doesn't count 5, doesn't count 16, 17. So, 6 to 16 are fine, but anything above, below those are not. So we have our error, and let's say if it's okay, we're going to return that error. So if we haven't assigned anything to that error, it's just nil, so we're going to return nil. But if it's outside the bounds and this part doesn't run, we're going to go ahead and return error name, which is the error we created up here outside of our func main. Going back to our code. So we've run that. We have a username that's too long, so that's going to return our error name. And then we're going to check to see if this error return is the same as error name. And if we look at it down here, error3 is equal to error name equates to true. So good, that's what we were expecting. And if we use the is function inside the errors package, again, we look down here, yes, this one equates to true as well. Now we create another error just to show that, yes, this isn't just passing true each time. So this one we expect to be false because we're expecting error name, not error other. And yes, we get false. And then even if we check the is function, we also get false. So let's go ahead and take a look at our main_test.go file. So again, we create a function with the same name, except that we're going to put test on the front and then capitalize the first letter if it's not capitalized already. And so we're going to run our function. We're running it twice. We're running it with a file we know that exists and one that doesn't, one that doesn't exist and one that does exist. So we're going to run open file. We know this one doesn't exist. We expect an error. So if errors is, so it's checking to see if it is this error. If what we're expecting is, from our actuals, from when we ran the function, what error we got, which should be the error not exist in the FS package. So if that is true, then this will be turned back to false, and then this won't run. But if this actual is not the same as that, then that's going to bring us a false. It's going to be turned to a true because of the exclamation point, and this would run, and we know we had an error. Now, on the other side of it here, we want to make sure that if we have a file that does exist, that we get nil back. So we'll run open file, check our actual. If we use the is function again, if the actual is the same as nil, then that'll be true. This turns it back to false, so this won't run. So we want to make sure that, yes, this is nil. Let's just go ahead and run that. Looks like everything ran okay, and let's go ahead and do a verbose. And test check name length. That was a pass, and so was test open file. So testing errors is pretty similar. If you're creating a whole bunch at the top, this might just be easier. If they have access inside of the functions and the func main, that might make it a little bit easier. Just remember that even if they're in the same scope, even if they have the same text, the errors, like it says in the documentation, each call to new returns a distinct error value, even if the text is identical. So just remember that each time you call new, it's going to return a distinct error. So if you check for quality, even if they have the same text, they're not going to be the same. So. Anyway, please like and subscribe. Really does help me out. Appreciate all the support, and anyone who's sharing this on other platforms, that's much appreciated as well. All right, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.